highest levels of the Republican Party after sounding off right here on our air at CNN about Rush Limbaugh, RNC Chairman Michael Steele doing a complete 180 and apologizing to the radio host. Our Jim Acosta has been working this story. He's live in Washington. Boy, this sounds like a familiar storyline.
Yes, who needs SmackDown, Kieran, when you have Republican Party politics? That's right. At issue are some highly explosive comments Limbaugh has been using to fire up the base. He repeated them this weekend at the annual Conservative Action Conference, bringing the crowd to its feet by saying he hopes President Obama fails. If you haven't heard it yet, take a listen.
What is so strange about being honest and saying, I want Barack Obama to fail, if his mission is to restructure and reform this country so that capitalism and individual liberty are not its foundation? Why would I want that to succeed?
Tough words in a time of economic crisis, and a tough sell for this man, Michael Steele, the chairman of the Republican Party. The same man faced with finding a way to build a Republican base and get it back to power. So Steele took the unusual and risky step of calling out the man who rules talk radio. He did it right here on CNN, talking to D.L. Hughley.
We don't need incendiary rhetoric.
Exactly.
Like Rush Limbaugh, who is the de facto leader of the Republican Party.
No, it's not.
Well, I'll tell you what. I've never heard anybody.
I'm the de facto leader of the Republican Party. Here, let's put it in the context here. Rush Limbaugh is an entertainer. Rush Limbaugh, his whole thing is entertainment. Yes, it's incendiary. Right. Yes, it's ugly.
But it got uglier. If you take on a man with a microphone and a few hours of airtime to kill, guess what happens? You got it. Limbaugh had Steele for lunch.
It's time, Mr. Steele, for you to go behind the scenes and start doing the work that you were elected to do, instead of trying to be some talking head media star.
And that brings us to where we are now. The leader of the Republican Party stuck in the middle, backing off and issuing this public apology yesterday. Quote, I respect Rush Limbaugh. He is a national conservative leader, and in no way do I want to diminish his voice. I'm sure that he and I will agree most of the time, but we'll probably disagree some as well, which is fine. The Democrats, no doubt, enjoying this fight from the sidelines. And Kieran, I have a statement from Tim Kaine, the governor of Virginia, and also the new head of the DNC, the Democratic National Committee. He says Chairman Steele reversal and his apology to Limbaugh proves the unfortunate point that Limbaugh is the leader of the Republican Party, the leading force behind the Republican Party. Almost word for word, Kieran, what Rahm Emanuel over at the White House Chief of Staff, said on one of the Sunday talk shows. So the Democrats have their talking points now. They like where Rush Limbaugh is, and that it appears for the moment to be leading the Republican Party, if not running the RNC, very much controlling what the RNC says and does at this point, Kieran.
Very interesting stuff. Jim Acosta for us this morning. Thanks. We also want to let people know that we're reaching out to both Michael Steele and Rush Limbaugh. So if we're able to talk to them, you can see it right here on American Morning. It's interesting. The reason we said the script sounds familiar is when a congressman by the name of Phil Gingrey also criticized Rush Limbaugh. He sort of called into his radio show, backtracked, called him a giant of conservatism. But not all Republicans.
It was almost like one of those pilgrimages where you prostrate yourself and then you crawl along the pebbles to get to him. But yesterday, don't forget, Ron Paul was on our air, and Ron Paul said a couple of things about Rush Limbaugh. He said he says the right things. I think a lot of people like to hear what he's saying, but I also think he's a little bit polarizing and confrontational. And then I said, what does it say when a talk show host is the leader of the Republican Party and not a political leader? He said, I think it's kind of sad.
All right,
I think it's pretty sad, he said. It's a good point to make. That means the Republicans are really starving for some type of leadership. We haven't heard Ron Paul apologize, though.
No, and Ron Paul doesn't do that very much.
Being Ron Paul means never having to say you're sorry.
Exactly. All right, well, we'll continue to follow this, of course, get reaction on both sides this morning.
We will. This morning, as the United States rushes thousands more troops to Afghanistan, new